Parents abandon ugly baby. 20 years later, he returns to confront them. Robert and Elsa had always dreamed of building the perfect family. They imagined beautiful children with sparkling blue eyes, flawless skin, and charming faces, a perfect blend of their own attractive genes. In their minds, their future was simple. They would run a small business together, live in a cozy home, and raise their children with love and care. When Elsa finally became pregnant, and the doctor revealed they were expecting a baby boy, their joy was boundless. Robert imagined teaching his son how to play soccer, while Elsa envisioned the most beautiful baby in the entire neighborhood. But on the day of Charlie's birth, their euphoria turned into pure horror. After a complicated delivery that required an emergency C-section, their son was finally born. But instead of seeing joy on their faces, there was only shock. The baby had thick dark hair covering his entire body. His skin looked rough, and he had a small hump on his back. Elsa let out a terrified scream and turned away, while Robert stood frozen. "This can't be our child," Elsa cried in despair. The nurses gently tried to hand her the baby, but she shrank away in disgust. Robert, on the other hand, became furious, accusing the doctors of making a mistake and demanding an explanation. The doctors calmly explained that Charlie suffered from a rare genetic condition called hypertrichosis, which caused excessive hair growth. Additionally, he had a congenital spinal deformity, which led to the slight hump on his back. They reassured the devastated parents that medical treatments could help alleviate some of the symptoms. But for Robert and Elsa, none of that mattered. They didn't see their son. They saw the shattered remains of their dream. How could they live with a child like this? What would people say? The fear of shame and social rejection overshadowed any parental responsibility they might have felt. In the weeks that followed, life with Charlie became unbearable for them. He was frequently sick, required constant medical attention, and every doctor's visit reminded them of the life they had wanted, a life without worries, without a child who was different. While other parents proudly walked through town with their children, Robert and Elsa avoided taking Charlie outside. The unspoken question between them soon became an undeniable truth. They did not want this child. Then, one cold and silent night, they made a decision that would haunt them forever. They wrapped Charlie in a blanket, kissed him on the forehead one last time, and took him to an orphanage. Without looking back, they left him behind, convinced they were doing the right thing. But what they didn't know was that this decision would one day come back to haunt them. Charlie spent the first years of his life in the orphanage, a place that offered many children a second chance, but remained a world of rejection for him. While other children found loving families, he was always left behind. His unusual appearance deterred potential adoptive parents. Every time a couple walked through the doors, Charlie felt a brief flicker of hope, only to watch as they eyed him with uncertain glances before ultimately choosing another child. By the age of 7, he had already learned that his face made him an outsider. As his friends gradually left the orphanage, he remained behind, trapped in the fear of never being loved. But at the age of 9, something happened that changed his life forever. On a rainy autumn day, Jack and Linda entered the orphanage, a wealthy couple in their mid-40s who were unable to have children of their own. While other parents chose the happiest, most carefree children, they were inexplicably drawn to Charlie. He was sitting alone in a corner, his head lowered, when Linda knelt before him and gently reached for his hand. "You have beautiful eyes," she said softly. It was the first time anyone had ever said something positive about his appearance. Jack and Linda felt an instant connection to Charlie, a warmth they couldn't explain. Without hesitation, they decided to adopt him. And for Charlie, it felt as though life had finally noticed him after all these years. In his new home, he discovered a world he had never known: warmth, security, and love. Jack and Linda did everything they could to show him that he was valuable. They funded an operation that partially corrected his spinal deformity, though there was no cure for his hypertrichosis. At first, Charlie was still ashamed of his appearance, but over the years, Linda taught him to accept himself. "Other people's opinions don't define your worth," she often told him. These words left a lasting impact. With their unwavering support, the once insecure boy grew into a confident young man with big dreams. Dreams that would take him further than he had ever imagined. Charlie had sworn that he would not be defined by his past. Driven by the unwavering belief of his adoptive parents, he set ambitious goals for himself. Despite numerous challenges, bullying at school, skeptical glances from strangers, and his own insecurities, he refused to be held back. He developed a deep fascination with medicine, perhaps because he had spent so much of his own life as a patient. Through hard work and relentless determination, he achieved his dream. He became a surgeon. His exceptional talent and dedication quickly made him a respected doctor. Charlie had finally built the life he had always dreamed of, a life where he was no longer seen as an outsider but as someone who saved others. One evening, just as he was about to head home, he received an urgent call. A severely injured man had been brought into the emergency room after a car accident and required immediate surgery. Without hesitation, Charlie changed into his scrubs and entered the operating room. But as he looked at the patient on the table, his breath caught in his throat. Before him lay an older man whose face was disturbingly familiar. The same distinctive features, the same nose. It was as if he were looking into a mirror, seeing an aged version of himself. A sharp pain tightened in his chest, but he pushed the thought aside and focused on the surgery. After hours of tense concentration, the operation was a success. When Charlie finally stepped into the waiting room to deliver the good news to the patient's family, the unthinkable happened. A woman jumped to her feet as soon as she saw him. Her eyes widened in fear, her lips trembled. In that instant, Charlie recognized her. It was her, Elsa, the woman who had abandoned him, the woman who couldn't even bring herself to hold him as a newborn. Her face reflected pure horror, as if she had seen a ghost. Charlie stood frozen, unable to speak. Suddenly, it felt as if fate had led him to this exact moment, to confront the past he had long believed was behind him. Charlie's heart pounded wildly as he locked eyes with his birth mother, Elsa. He knew it without her saying a word. The man he had just operated on was Robert, his father. The woman standing before him was Elsa, the mother who had once abandoned him. She looked pale, stunned, her hands trembling. In her eyes he saw a mixture of shock, guilt, and a fear he couldn't quite decipher. But instead of revealing the truth, he hesitated. What good would it do? Would it erase the past? Would it give him back the childhood he never had? He took a deep breath, suppressed the surge of emotions, and forced himself to smile politely. In a calm voice, he informed Elsa that the surgery had been successful and that her husband would make a full recovery. She continued to stare at him with tears in her eyes, as if she wanted to say something, but no words came out. Charlie sensed her struggle, perhaps even that her heart recognized what her mind refused to comprehend. Instead of confronting her with the truth, he did something she never could have expected. "You need to forgive yourself," he said softly. "Whatever you have done, your son would have forgiven you. So, do the same for yourself." He let his words linger in the air, watching as Elsa froze. There was no anger in his voice, no accusation, only peace. Then Charlie turned and walked out of the waiting room. With each step, he felt an invisible weight lift from his shoulders. He hadn't needed revenge or a dramatic revelation. He had gained something far more valuable, the freedom to let go of his past. As he stepped through the hospital's glass doors, the cool night air greeted him. He closed his eyes for a brief moment, inhaled deeply, and moved forward, without looking back. The past no longer had a place in his future. What do you think of Charlie's decision? Would you have told your birth parents the truth? Share your thoughts in the comments. Spread this emotional story with your friends and family. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another inspiring story. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.